Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And for those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. It would be greatly appreciated. Something I felt like I needed to address and jump deeper into, because this was an enormous, and I mean an enormous topic of conversation in my videos discussing this whole cage match situation, regarding people literally talking about how, now let's just not even talk about untrained people. Let's talk about trained fighters, martial artists. They had this idea that strength and power from actual training, and I'm talking real training, I'm not talking about what you think is training, because this is where people create the straw man argument. I'm talking about what I think is training. I, as a strength coach who is making actually a pretty successful living as a strength coach, and people can deny that all that they want, it's irrelevant. My bank account disagrees with you. So, over to the point. My ideas as a strength coach who does follow the trends in the strength and conditioning world says that you're wrong. Reality says that you're wrong, guys. Training, as I perceive it, affects your ability to sprint. It affects your ability to kick in a ring. For a martial artist, it affects these things. And people who follow fighting or who seem to discuss martial arts are really weird. They're a bunch of weirdos who think fighters have magical powers. I don't know if you guys watch too much anime, but you do know martial artists don't have mystical magical powers that are granted by Zorgon the turtle at the bottom of Lake Somerville or from juju beans. Okay? They're mortal human beings. Like, I'm going to step this back. The best martial artists in the world are mortal human beings with human bodies. Now, they might be very genetically gifted and they put in enormous, ridiculous amounts of work to develop their skills, okay, combined with some inherent gifts that maybe set them apart a little bit, right? Is that a fair statement? But they're not superhuman. They don't break the laws of physics. Their ability to actualize force is based upon human physics, biomechanics, biology, muscle tension, neuromuscular efficiency. Okay? Their joints, their muscles, their nervous system doesn't have mystical, magical powers that we can't measure, quantify, and understand scientifically. All right? And people call me delusional. All right. See, guys, I at least understand these things. And if I'm a crazy, delusional person and I understand that martial artists have to conform to the laws of measurable science and physics, then anyone who doesn't believe that, what does it say about you? I think they have to obey the laws of physics and that we can understand it scientifically. And we can. And it's not my opinion. That's the opinion of exercise scientists who study these people in labs. We don't live in the dark ages, guys. Let's come over to discuss training. People have this weird idea, because they think powerlifting is something other than it is, that they think powerlifting just means that a person is strong on these certain lifts and they practice these lifts and that's how they got there. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Powerlifting is nothing more than a display of strength. It is not a skill-based sport. Neither is sprinting. Sprinting is very much a display of speed and power and strength. It's not a particularly skill-based sport. These are not high skill level activities. All right, a deadlift doesn't require a great deal of skill and practice to necessarily pull a heavy weight. You just need to be really, really strong and figure out the basics of the movement. You can teach someone how to perfect a deadlift in one session. Okay? Hopefully we understand this. I hope you understand this. It's just a display of strength. There are plenty of people at elite levels in powerlifting who almost don't even practice the competition lifts. Like, some of them do it a lot less than you would think, and they're still amazing at them. Why? Because they're really strong. There's more than one way to develop a max squat. So let's come over to the point. People were saying, well, whatever squat, are you saying this? I'm like, okay, well, let's not talk about me. I mean, we can talk about how I developed my squat, and that is relevant to this because I, as a strength coach, have clients who are martial artists. My martial artist clients who are paying me to be their strength coach are quite happy with the improved power that they're getting. So let's not pretend that correct training for power and speed, which will also make you stronger, it'll make your squat go up, by the way. It'll make your deadlift go up, by the way, a lot. Let's not pretend it doesn't improve martial arts, because it does. And just because you know a guy who got really strong and then couldn't kick or punch even with some training the way that you thought he could, doesn't mean that he developed that strength through the same ways that I'm necessarily talking about. We need to come back and look at physics. Again, let's talk about, say, a box squat. Because I coach these clients very similar to how I coach myself. How did I develop? And notice I'm going to use the word develop, my display of strength. 502 box squat you guys saw me hit recently. Off of a box at least 2 inches below parallel for me. Correctly performed box squat, 502, with calibrated plates. How did I develop that? Did I develop that by just doing a bunch of max squatting? No. My max squatting, I didn't even perform that version of the exercise. And I don't do it that often. I don't do it often enough to get stronger. If that's what I did to build my squat, I would lose strength. How often do I do a max squat? One heavy rep. I ramp to one heavy rep once every 2 weeks. You do know you would detrain if that's what you did, right? If that is how I developed that squat, I would have gotten weaker, not stronger. Okay, I went from a 440 on the box squat to a 502 without having done the exercise. Why? Because it's a display of strength and power. It's not a skill. It's not that hard of a skill to learn how to box squat. So, what does that represent? Well, that represents a certain amount of power, and people will look at that and they will say, well, that's not a display of power. You're not a powerful person, really? That's a weird opinion to have, because if you go ask an exercise physiologist to look at that, not a 500-pound back squat, a 500-pound box squat performed correctly is not the same thing. A lot of you out there, if you were to go take your 1 rep max on a back squat and try to do it on a correct box squat, you're going to be humbled very, very quickly. It is going to be a very humbling experience for you. Because while you might be strong, you are not explosive yet. Yet, you may not be explosive. Box squatting a heavy weight off of a low box is a display of explosiveness. Not my opinion, the opinion of exercise physiologists. Okay, let's set aside whatever people think my diluted opinions are. Let's go look at what the researchers who measure these things say. Box squat has the highest rate of force production of any squat ever measured. It trains explosiveness and it displays explosiveness. It is a display of strength and power. It took me a while to get it to that point. Because when I first started doing the box squat like that, I was hitting, 425. Then I went 440. Then I didn't do it that way again and went 440 to 502. Without having tested it between, because it's just a test. I'm just testing my strength and power. That's all I'm doing with it. I'm testing it. It's just a display. It's not how I developed it. Okay, but that is, anyone who would look at that would understand that. So let's come over and let's look at how we develop these things. How do I develop it, and what do I have my athletes do who I coach and train for money? How did I build that lift? I didn't do it by doing a heavy squat because I didn't perform that variation. I did it with various heavy bands and chains, but none of that was anywhere near 500 pounds there near the bottom. So by doing other work, and that wasn't rep work, by hitting nowhere near 500 pounds from the bottom, doing it at lockouts, and again, 1 rep, you don't get much training adaptation from that. That's what I did. Yet I somehow built the ability to explode out of the bottom with 500 pounds. Well, those were just tools teaching me how to box squat and how to display max lifts. Because 1 rep maxes don't make you stronger. They teach you how to max. It's a skill. The 500 box squat represents a display of performance. Okay, we're displaying strength and power in that case rather than building it. It's just displaying it on showcase to see, look at it. For me to look at myself and test and find, okay, where am I weakest and what I need to work on next. Right? It's a valid testing tool. That's what it is. It's a testing tool. It's a tester and a display. It just teaches you how to strain maximally. Any strong, powerful person you can walk under and they can display a really strong squat. Okay, so people say, well, these guys, they don't squat heavy. Well, I don't have to squat heavy to have a good squat either. Nobody has to. It's not a requirement. You just have to be really strong. Any really strong person, you could walk over and teach them how to squat and they'll have a really good squat. Right? They'll be super strong on the squat if they're a super strong person. That's all it tests. The box squat happens to require you to be explosive and mobile too. That's what it tests. In other words, a lot of guys who can squat 500 or 520 can't do it off of a box like that. They can't box squat it because they're not powerful enough. They might have the strength, they don't have the power to coincide with it to get the rate of force production necessary to do it. So how did I do it? Speed work, dynamic effort training is the overwhelming majority of my training that built my squat. What does that consist of? Box squats with really, really lightweight, not heavy squatting, light. Like I'm talking like 50% of my max light. That is lightweight. That is lighter than bodybuilders even do for a lot of their pump work. All right, we're talking really lightweight. With compensatory acceleration rotated in waves against bands, against chains, doing speed pulls the same way. Again, sumo speed pulls. Look at all the hip angles. Look at the glute and hip angles and everything involved in all of these, and then think about that in terms of other sports, including martial arts and kicking. Look at the amount of hip rotation. Look at the way the core, the glutes, the hips, everything are utilized to build extremely explosive power doing dynamic work. Look at the way when you combine these lifts together and you do them against various things with bands and with chains and using overspeed eccentric works. A lot of overspeed eccentric work creates stretch reflexes and myotatic reflexes that makes you faster and more powerful. So you have a rapid display of speed strength. You can develop force very quickly. Okay? I do tons of this stuff. What else? Weighted plyometric work. Jumping onto boxes with weights. What else? Large volumes of heavy one-legged exercises. All right, let's come over and think about that. Let's set all that aside and say, this is how Jason developed this squat strength. I didn't do it by doing heavy squats. The heavy squat is an after effect. It's what happened as a result of all the dynamic training I did. All of that stuff gave me a 500 plus pound box squat, not doing heavy box squats. So put that into the context of an athlete who requires speed and power. I don't care whether it's a sprinter, a football player, a kickboxer, an MMA guy. All these guys who require hip and quad and glute and core explosiveness. What will these different training protocols, if they do lots and lots of them and get really good at them and get really explosive, will that not carry over to more power in everything that you do? The research says it does. The top coaches in the world who train dozens of athletes say it does. If you disagree, you are disagreeing with some of the best coaches in the entire world. You're telling them that they're idiots and you know more. Now, the system of training I use is not mine. I didn't develop it. It's a growing popular system that I have spent very, very large amounts of time researching, studying, trying to understand it on every single level and every dynamic of how it works together and how different coaches utilize it. I've spent a lot of my life lately researching and talking to other coaches behind the scenes about how they weave and implement these performance elements. I talked to these coaches in private because I wanted to get better and increase my own knowledge, and I learned. It's not my system. I stand on the shoulders of giants. And this system of training is endorsed by a lot of MMA guys. There are guys who are boxers who use it. There are various contact sport and fighting sports guys who use this system. There are obviously powerlifting champions who use it because that's who it was first they realized it worked for them. There are NFL players. DeFranco uses these systems to get his guys ready for the combine test, and they were crushing the combine years ago doing it and getting NFL drafts. There are now special forces teams being trained on this system with your tax dollars. Okay? This is an all-encompassing system that makes people strong and powerful through a wide variety of joint angles and movement patterns. It makes people better fighters who are trained fighters. It makes them more powerful. It makes football players hit harder on a playing field. It makes baseball players hit a ball harder with a bat. So people are confusing what I am doing and what I'm teaching, what I'm trying to say. They're confusing that with a power lifter who just used strength work, normal strength work, to get his squat to 500. It is not the same thing. It is absolutely not the same thing. I'm using an all-encompassing athletic system that gives the side effect of it made my squat really good. Okay? That's a side effect of it. I didn't practice the squat to a large degree to do that. I used all this explosive training and the hypertrophy and speed strength and everything that came with it that just gave me the squat. I'm able to display it by performing a squat. By that same token, a martial artist or a baseball player could take all of this same explosiveness and power built through a wide variety of joint angles that teaches you how to explode extremely hard, which incidentally, explosiveness makes you stronger. You're going to be stronger, right? You're going to be able to move a lot more weight. More force gives you the ability to move more weight. Hopefully people understand that. If you don't understand that, you don't understand physics. Martial artists could use this to kick a hell of a lot harder, because he's now just a more explosive person in general. He's stronger and more explosive and faster from the training. Well, if he knows how to kick, that's going to equal a harder kick. Baseball player already knows how to swing a bat. He's going to hit the ball even harder with the bat. He's going to get a faster swing. Okay? And it's people are confusing that with the same thing. They're like, well, bench press strength doesn't carry over to a boxer. Yeah, try speed benching with bands. Develop maximum compensatory acceleration and overspeed eccentrics using band work on speed benching, and then come back and talk about that. Because it's not the same thing. This sort of training just happens to make people good at everything. If it's done correctly, it just makes you a better athlete. Well, powerlifters are just an athlete. Powerlifting is a low-skill sport that just tests your strength. Well, power equals more strength. That's one of the benefits. Kind of goes hand in hand. So when we talk about this and people say, oh, well, none of that, it wouldn't help a martial artist. You live in a delusional world where physics and biology don't apply then. You live in a delusional world where martial artists and fighters have mystical, magical powers granted by Zorgon the Turtle at the bottom of Lake Somerville that they pray to. Okay, that's called a delusion. Where the rest of us live, where strength coaches and other people live, the human body has to obey laws of physics and joint angles and torque and neuromuscular efficiency, muscle fiber distribution, rate coding, right? The human body has to obey all these laws. See, that's called the real world. Not Naruto. It's not some anime that you read. So hopefully people understand a little better when I talk about the ability to display a really strong box squat, which is a display of performance. Probably means a person's pretty explosive. Probably a pretty good mark of their overall strength and explosiveness, and they're probably not a slow person. Taking someone to developing that ability with them through this form of training, dynamic effort work, weighted plyometric, speed work, all these other things that I use and I have my clients use, hopefully people would understand that that would translate downstream to a martial artist kicking and punching harder. Okay? It's not that difficult of a concept to understand. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.